Hey everyone, this is Ben from T3 bringing you another game from the April 9th regional at Game Kastle in Northern California. This is the finals, and on the left we have Kris playing Max, and on the right we have Greg playing NEH. And special guest commentator today, I actually have Kris MacLennon, who is the Max player on the left. Hey Kris.
Hey Ben, how's it going?
Awesome, awesome. So thank you very much for joining me, and congrats for getting in the finals.
Thank you.
What
It's my pleasure. I always like commentating on games when I get the chance, so this is my first official version.
Awesome. And on the day, what were you seeing a lot of? Because I know NEH was, or IG was the more feared thing
Yeah,
leading up to this.
I consider myself lucky that I managed to dodge IG the entire day. All of my official tournament games were against flavors of yellow.
Wow. So
Um,
nothing new at this point then, certainly not NEH here. Just going to town, getting things installed, maximizing the NEH ability, of course, and just getting the board state set up.
yeah, and NEH, it's very easy to kind of have things just spiral out of control against them if you don't check them and if you don't have a plan to deal with remotes. And eventually, what you can get into is a situation where you just kind of get locked down because you don't have the money to trash everything. You may not be able to put the pressure on the centrals that you want, and you're reduced to reacting. Um,
And is that kind of...
I so the reason I played the day job here was just because I figured that those were probably um, just assets and money assets, and I wanted to be able to trash them if I had to. If that was a Sansan or something, financially, this is it's a financial battle. Theoretically, I have an Apocalypse on the deck that will help me deal with all of this asset spam, but I have to draw it and be able to make runs, so it's a little trickier.
Yeah, and that day job's a really good way to set it up. And we did see Greg try and sneak out an Astro script here, but uh, your day job play is going to make hitting those remotes huge. And I love the hacktivist meeting play here too.
Hmm.
But immediately checking the remotes, and yeah, I don't think that Sansan's going to last too long.
No, Sansans have to die if you can.
And checking both new remotes. That was a smart play there, making sure that you got the possible agenda before the money.
Yeah, and part of it is also because I didn't run when he put out the first two agendas, I didn't check those. He probably felt like I was going to focus elsewhere, either building up or on centrals, and so he thought it was fine to try to sneak out an agenda. It's kind of the same thing with like Jinteki PE. You have to kind of confuse them about when you're going to run and when you're not. Um, so you have to be able to use those clicks wisely.
For sure, and the hacktivist meeting is going to be really, really good going into this. I'm actually wondering, was that a meta call that you made when you went into deck building, or is that just something that you like in Max?
Um, a combination of the two. Um, so my max deck is not very original. I actually took it from Dean's The Fun Ends Here deck that he took a while ago to a StimHack Regionals, I believe. Um, and so I found it a really fun deck to play and decided to keep it. The Hacktivist was in the original deck, and I think it's a good include, especially good in this meta. But in general, there's a lot of things that make it more complicated for um, Corpse. Just having to deal with the fact that, oh, I can't res my Jackson unless I want to randomly toss something.
Right, or the pad campaigns or the Mumbo temples and
Yeah.
things like that. That's a big additional tax to incur. But that was here you made a really good play on that remote. Greg trying to see if you had an answer for the wraparound, and you had the corroder in hand. So doing a lot of checking here, keeping Greg honest, and
Hmm.
making sure he doesn't sneak something out, or at least make sure that you can keep maintain some type of control here.
Yeah, and it's again, I'm trying to just kind of put pressure on things. Um, I haven't pressured the centrals at all, and that kind of worries me. But I also haven't gotten rid of his money assets, and that's one of the big things when playing against NEH, and it's something that I actually am not confident I did very well in this match, is deciding which of NEH's assets to trash. Because you don't have the money to trash everything, and there went the Apocalypse in the trash. So that is an unfortunate thing for me. I need to get a deja vu to try to grab that back at some point.
Yeah, I think
Um,
you just got the day job back to get some money, but but Greg is starting to get a lot of remotes, and
mhm.
it's going to become really hard to check. I think in resing more money too, so that feels kind of like a lost cause at this point, right? I mean, like unless you could go and trash both of the pad campaigns, but that's a big tempo hit for you.
And it is. Honestly, the Mumba Temple probably should have gone first. But as I was saying, you kind of have to decide, do you want to fight them on the econ, or do you want to fight them on their useful assets, like the Sands and the daily business shows and the team sponsorships? Um, and there's just a lot of must trash. If I'm playing an economic war, like this Max deck kind of wants to do, I have two siphons and I have, um, a bunch of same old things. And see, there's one, the DDoS. Um, then I really want to be able to kind of trash that econ so that we can stay closer to parity, um, and to really frustrate him in resing ice. Um, Or you can just ignore the money and you can go after the assets that matter. And that's the approach that I took in this game. I'm not convinced, looking back on it, I'm not convinced that that was the right move. Um, but I had it in my head that I just needed to get all of my econ so I could trash all of his things. And that's not the best way to play against NEH when they get a start like this. Um,
True, but you've trashed the Sand and stolen an Astro script just by checking these remotes. So it's like, when he's trying to make one of those super aggressive plays, you are punishing that play. So the money is like it's kind of you're foregoing that, but he isn't. At least Greg at this point hasn't really been able to score. And the hacktivist is lived a lot too. So you're
mhm.
stalling this whole game plan with that.
Right, and it's fine for now, but as we can see, Activist
Until
doesn't
he,
last very long when they have 2-1s.
nope,
And
that
then
was
if he
unfortunate.
wanted to, he could take this time and just res everything. Um, but so I mean, I even consider it a same old Hacktivist, but again, with 2-1s in the deck that are easy to score, it just isn't as effective as I would want it to be. Um, Yeah, and see, there he goes, resing team sponsorship, using those Mamba temples to get all of his cards res that he really wanted to in the window before I could do anything.
It's actually interesting to me that he didn't res the team sponsorship before scoring the breaking news because he could just get anything back that was super important. But the siphon here trying to make a really big play while his money counts lower than a little bit lower.
Yeah, that was not the best idea. I prefer to have an eater out first before I siphon, but I assumed that he probably didn't have very good ice. They tend not to have very strong ice in most of these NEH decks, so the fact that he happened to hit a little engine was really good for him. Um,
Yeah, but you're again staying on top of these really important assets that Greg had. Trashing the Sand off R&D and then the Daily Business Show to at least slow down NBN's ability to find things that they want. So
mhm.
you're executing your game plan very very well, I think. Although is scoring 2-1s all day.
Yeah, and that triggers his team sponsorship, which brings back something that I just trashed. Um, Again, this is one of those things where it's very easy for NEH, this style of NEH, to just kind of snowball in. And this is where I should really be focused on two things. One is finding a solution to that little engine, and two is getting that Apocalypse back in my hand. Because if I don't Apocalypse soon, I'm not going to be able to slow any of this down. Um,
Yeah, Apocalypse it's a big investment though, especially with the little engine. So I'm not sure, and I don't even know if you have the money to play Eater and break the little engine alone, let alone get the Apocalypse off. But you do have some money off Liberated still. So
Yeah.
is that your plan at this point? Is to try and money up and get that like in the game? Is that your plan, or is that what you're thinking looking back?
Looking back, that's more I think what the plan should be. I actually have a couple things in this deck that deal with Little Engine. David is one of them. And there's the same old Siphon, so that I can again get some money and maybe deny him a few things. Um,
Yeah, and if you
I
can, uh,
don't,
oh, sorry.
yeah. So I was just saying I don't remember if he reses anything here. Um, but I just need some money. But I think he just decides he's just gonna spend money and deny me the Siphon, which is wise. That's exactly what you do.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Um, and then I can take some credits if I want, or I can just get an access, and I think I just go for the access here. But David is not a long-term solution to Little Engine, um, because one use of David is enough to stop it. Oh, I think I took the money. Okay. Um,
Yeah, the David's not going to really get you through the little engine consistently, but I know you've been playing a lot of retrieval runs too, so you have
mhm.
recursion in this build as well.
Right. And I also have a knight in my deck somewhere if it ever decides to come out, and that is, I think, the ideal card for dealing with Little Engine because you spend 4 and you gain 5. Um, but I think I saw the Strength 7 and was focused on the Davids and David Recursion um, in this deck. And yeah, so I don't know if that Siphon was really worth it. And now the Turtlebacks are out, so now any thought I have of competing with him on money is kind of moot.
Yeah, especially with the team sponsorship out, you need to basically trash everything here in order
Mhm.
to stop him. That economy engine is just crazy.
Yeah. And I'm actually really surprised. So when he res that blacklist here, I was completely surprised that he would just kind of put it out there because against Max, blacklist is really really good. If you can save that towards the end of my deck when it gets really thin, or if you can protect it with something, you know, if you have another Eater or Little Engine or something, it can really just completely wreck me because I rely pretty heavily on recursion.
Yeah,
Um, Also, I think, by the way, that's the third time I've checked R&D, and there's been 3 Sands on it. Um, not my one of's luck was not there today. Um,
but yeah,
but
it was weird. It's an interesting move to try and it was almost a gear check for you to trash the blacklist, but it's only 3 to trash, so that is kind of a interesting play. I guess you would have to assume that he doesn't have a lot of ice in his hand. I
mhm.
mean that would be logical, or at least maybe put it in the same server as wraparound. Although that would just invite the run on blacklist more, I think.
Yeah. I actually talked to him after the game, and he apparently was not really considering it for its effect. It was just more something that he wanted to install it to get credits and force me to trash it and spend my money. Because his econ war is going in his favor right now. Um, and it is a must trash for Max, I think.
Certainly, I actually think that's a must trash in most builds now. Like pretty much every runner has recursion of some sort. Criminals might be your exception, but I feel like we're
Hmm.
seeing levy in everywhere. So
Yeah, and criminals still have same old things for Siphon.
exactly.
Uh, so yeah, so here I retrieval run my other David. Um, and again, I think it would have been a little wiser to wait for my knight to appear and try to get that way, but this is the result of some inexperience with the deck. I'd actually only played it about 10 times um, before this tournament. Um,
Oh wow. Okay.
it was, I mean, I've played variations of Max before, but this specific deck, I just had a limited amount of experience with it. But it's a very strong deck, and it plays relatively straightforwardly if you know some of the basic ideas behind it. So it's, I don't know if it's great for a beginner to kind of learn on this, but it's if you're just looking for kind of a back to basics deck that's a bunch of running, this is a very good deck, and it has that same ability as some of the other decks out there, where if you just get a really good start, you're just going to blow your opponent out of the water. Um,
Yeah, and
and
we've
I
seen
like
you do that with the siphon, able to chain siphons off some of the other guys here.
Yeah, I actually had an opening hand of in this tournament. My first round was Siphon, Deja Vu, DDoS, Keyhole, and Plascrete against a person who was playing Harpsichord who opened Sweeps Weak, Install, Install. And that game did not last more than 5 minutes.
Yeah, that's a
Uh,
really rough way to start for Spark. Actually, pretty.
but yeah, and so now I'm completely reactive at this point to NEH. I'm not really progressing my plan of going after the apocalypse. I'm going and I'm trashing all of these remotes as I can, as I find them worthwhile. I honestly don't think at this point that he would bother sneaking out an agenda, but it's possible, so I feel like I have to check these things. Um,
Yeah, and even up till this point, he hasn't really established any sort of scoring remote to speak of. And I think you actually ran HQ. And did you see a biotic labor? I know we can see it in his hand, but I wasn't sure if you had that information.
I don't think I have checked his hand proper in a while. The only HQ runs I've made have been siphons. Um, so I have no idea what's in his hand, but given that he only has a few cards, um, it's just really hard to get past that little engine. That's a star ice this game. Um,
Yeah,
because, for anyone who doesn't have a pumpable code gate breaker, um,
Little Engine's not bad. Even if you do have a pumpable code breaker, Little Engine's still probably not bad.
he scores his third breaking news. So I do have turntable in the deck, and now it is much less useless because I'm not going to turntable a one pointer into something delicious. But I think he was just doing that just to get him out of his hand and score cards.
Yeah, because he needs to fast advance something out, really. And you said the only thing you've accessed was Sand Sands, but accessing the Sand Sands is preventing NEH from scoring. I feel like he doesn't have a scoring server, so he has to either sneak something out or rely on a Sand, and you've prevented the Sand play, and he doesn't have a scoring server. So it's been a lot of pressure, even though you're losing this economic battle. You're really stopping the NEH player from doing their thing.
Yeah, so here I figured, oh, it's NEH, they don't have good ice, and then I see an Archangel and an Assassin, and I am sufficiently sad. I think, because at this point, I think I have Eater and David and Corroder, and I'm not really looking forward to losing any of those. I'm nearing the end of my deck, so I don't really want to lose anything from my hand. And I have only the one counter on the David, which I need to save if I want to do any sort of runs in the future here.
And
this is just a tough spot.
Yeah.
So I think I spend the David counter and do I take? I guess I take the meat because I want my program or net because I want my programs.
But the ice is, like you mentioned, this ice is really, really hard to get through consistently, especially the single Knight would be helpful. It would at least let you try and check HQ and clear up a little bit of work. But even the Knight is going to not help against R&D. So all of these accesses now are going to cost you a lot of money or a lot of David counters, or it's going to just be a huge tax, and you don't really have any multi-access. Oh, and there's the Knight.
There's the Knight that goes away. So realistically, when I Retrievo run, that's what I should be looking for. Rather than another David. But I think arguably it would have been better there to just take the Archangel bounce and save the David counter. And if he bounces back to David, then that's fine. I now have an extra token on it. But yeah, again, I don't think I see the play of going to get the Apocalypse with the Deja Vu, and
It,
yeah, and that was a mistake because I already checked that.
and
Um,
that's true. If you had the knight on little engine here and you could pull the apocalypse back, then
mhm.
that archangel and that assassin doesn't really matter anymore.
Yeah, it's like, okay, I can bounce something, and then worst case, I take. Well, you still
The
have to be a little
damage,
careful because you want to be whatever you have. You don't want to break the 3 net damage on assassin. You don't want the archangel to bounce that back. And the downside of knight is that it is click intensive. Um, so I do have an amped up, and I believe I'm holding it in my hand right now because I have crazy ideas about installing a same old thing and then amped up and then using the extra clicks to same old thing, the apocalypse. But then the issue is just how am I getting past all of this ice? Because if I do it that way, I don't care about the ice on R&D. It's just I need to get past that little engine.
right?
Um, so it's possible, but difficult. And I talked with Greg afterward, and he's no dummy. He knew that the apocalypse was there and possible, um, but
It's so prohibitively expensive at this point to try and pull that off. Like, you need a lot of pieces, I think, and that's at least 2 turns out.
mhm. Yeah. So here I think I just same old levied, and I was getting at the end of my deck. I just need more cards. Um, there wasn't time to pull off the apocalypse on this run, but I think again that's probably just me. I believe I misused kind of the David counters and my resources on this. Um,
And that's the hardest thing to do with Max, because you have to utilize your discard pile so well, and it's like another portion of your hand, even like at least knowing where things are, and you have the retrieval runs, especially in the deja vus. So
mhm.
there's a lot of ways to maximize every part.
Yeah, so ironically, Max is, I'm not going to say weakest right now, but post Levy is when she often has a lot of challenges because she's not likely to actually have a board state that is of use to her
Hmm.
after she levies, at least not in this build. Um, so if your opponent has that built up board, if you have to levy before launching that apocalypse, I think you're in a lot of trouble. Well, especially against this NEH build, which is all about board state. Um, so this is and all he needs to do now. He needs to find an agenda, and I think all of his agendas were buried at the bottom of his deck in this game. So
Yeah,
that's part of the reason why he hasn't used that biotic, even though he's had it in his hand for so long. I've been kind of putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, but there's only so long you can do that before they just steamroll you through the strength of the board state.
yeah, they have enough power there. And oh, here we go. So finally seeing the biotic play,
Yeah,
and I think this is the first agenda beside. Oh, and it has of course it's the
yeah,
Astro
and it's an
script.
Astro. And at this point, I am pretty much toast. Like I said, I don't have my resources available to me. Siphons do nothing. I'm pretty far from being able to Apocalypse, and he's on 5 points with an Astro token. And this is one of those demoralizing places to be. And even if I get some random lucky pull, it's unlikely that it will be enough to stop him
Yeah,
at this point.
because you have to fight all of NBN's 3/2s. And at this point, you've stolen one and there's one in play, but there's still 4 3/2s left in a thin deck with
Yeah.
a daily business show out and a Jackson.
hmm Yeah, this is when this NBN deck gets rolling and is not against Wizard, it can just kind of steamroll an opponent. Like
Yeah,
I said, my counter plan for this going into it was Apocalypse. I had to be able to pull off an Apocalypse at some point, and the fact that I didn't is a testament both to Greg's ice choices and a little bit to my lack of foresight in figuring out how to do it. Um,
Oh,
and that's the agenda, and that's game.
there's the last one. So that does it. But like you mentioned, being able to have all of these assets with those really really strong pieces of ice, it's just a lot for any deck to overcome.
Yeah, yeah, and it's good ice. I was expecting pop-ups and wraparounds, and I got little engines and assassins. But Greg played it really well, and I delayed too long before launching into my main plan, and I think that was really what kind of did me in here.
You got another chance.
Yep, bracket resets. I have confidence in my HB. That deck I've been playing for quite some time.
And we will have that next time. Thank you very much, Kris, again for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No problem. Check back soon for the grand finals of the regional. Thanks for watching.